Amen.
Now, we're at chapter 30. Um, and give me 1 second. It's 43 verses. Do we have four persons who would like to read?
I guess we only had four. Oh, we had five.
Um,
I'll read some, but
you want to read, Susan? Who else want to read? George, you?
Sure.
Okay. Anyone else? Or
well,
just two of you could, if two of
yeah,
you only want to read, we can do that.
Pam's on mute, so she can't.
Yeah, that's all right. All right, let's see. I'll let the two of you read. Um, it's chapter 30. Susan, you will read verses 1 to 22, and George will read 23 to the end. Does that sound right?
Okay.
So. All right. Let's begin, Susan.
Oh, I thought there were four of us. Okay. When
You read
Rachel
it
saw
from 1 to 22.
okay, it's a long one. When Rachel saw that she was not bearing Jacob any children, she became jealous of her sister. So she said to Jacob, "Give me the children or I'll die." Jacob became angry with her and said, "I am in the place of God who has kept you from having children." Then she said, "Here is Bilhah, my servant. Sleep with her so she can bear children for me, and I too can build a family through her." She gave him her servant Bilhah as a wife. Jacob slept with her, and she became pregnant and bore a son. And Rachel said, "God has vindicated me. He has listened to my plea and has given me a son." Because of this, she named him Dan. Rachel's servant Bilhah conceived again and bore Jacob a second son. And Rachel said, I've had a great struggle with my sister, and I have won. So she named him Naphtali.
Hmm?
Then Leah said, no, sorry. Then Leah saw she had stopped having children. She took her servant Zilpah and gave her to Jacob as a wife. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a son. Then Leah said, "What good fortune!" And she named him Gad. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. Then Leah said, "How happy I am! The woman, the woman called me happy," so she named him Asher. During wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the fields and found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. Rachel said to Leah, "Please give me some of your son's mandrakes." But she said to her, "Wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too?" "Very well," Rachel said. "He can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes." So when Jacob came in from the fields that evening, Leah went out to meet him. "You must sleep with me again," she said. "I have hired you with my son's mandrakes." So she slept with her again then. God listened to Leah, and she became pregnant and bore Jacob a fifth son. Then Leah said, "God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband." So she named him Issachar. I'm terrible at names. Issachar. Leah conceived again and bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, "God has presented me a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I've borne him six sons." So she named him Zebulun. Sometime later, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. Then God remembered Rachel. He listened to her and enabled her to conceive.
She conceived and bore a son. She conceived and bore a son, and she said, "God has removed my disgrace." So she named him Joseph, meaning, "May the Lord add another son to this one for me." After Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, Give me leave to go to my homeland. Let me and my wives, for whom I served you, and my children too, that I may depart. You know very well the service that I have rendered you. Laban answered him, If you will please, I have learned through divination that it is because of you that God has blessed me. So he continued, State what wages you want from me, and I will pay them. Jacob replied, You know what work I did for you, and how well your livestock fared under my care. The little you had before I came has grown into very much, since the Lord's blessing came upon you in my company. Therefore, I should now do something for my own household as well. What should I pay you? Laban asked. Jacob answered, You do not have to pay me anything outright. I will again pasture and tend your flocks. If you do this one thing for me, go through your whole flock today and remove from it every dark animal among the sheep and every spotted or speckled one among the goats. Only such animals shall be my wages. In the future, whenever you check on these wages of mine, let my honesty testify against me. Any animal in my possession that is not speckled or spotted goat or a dark sheep got there by theft. Very well, agreed Laban. Let it be as you say. That same day, Laban removed the streaked and spotted he goats and all the speckled and spotted she goats, all those with some white on them, as well as the fully dark colored sheep. These he left in charge of his sons. Then he put a 3 days' journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob continued to pasture the rest of Laban's flock. Jacob, however, got some fresh shoots of poplar, almond, and plane trees, and he made white stripes in them by peeling off the dark brown to the white core of the shoots. The rods that he had thus peeled, he then set upright in the watering troughs, so that they would be in front of the animals that drank from the trough. When the animals were in the heat as they came to drink, the goats mated by the rods, and so they brought forth streaked, speckled, and spotted kids. The sheep, on the other hand, Jacob kept apart, and he set the animals to face the streaked or fully dark-colored animals of Laban. Thus he produced special flocks of his own, which he did not put with Laban's flock. Moreover, whenever the hardier animals were in heat, Jacob would set the rods in the trough in full view of these animals, so that they mated by the rods. But with the weaker animals, he would not put the rods there. So the feeble animals would go to Laban, but the sturdy ones to Jacob. Thus the man grew increasingly prosperous, and he came to own not only large flocks, but also male and female servants, and camels and asses.
Thank you both, Susan and George. What you see in this chapter today is there's an irony that is taking place, as you can tell, and that irony is we saw Esau and Jacob. Um, the rivalry that existed between them had disrupted the harmony of the patriarchal family, the family that God had selected to bear the promised seed. Um, and what you see happening is that the rivalry that existed between Esau and Jacob has now come to be, which were a rivalry between brothers, have now become a rivalry between sisters, Leah and Rachel, because you're going to see more discord being formed the same discord that was formed in the family with Isaac and Rebekah and Esau and Jacob. Now you are going to see another set of discord being formed with Jacob and Leah and Rachel and their two servants, Bilhah and Zilpah, and so and Zilpah, and so again you see this whole irony going on within this family, and what you see in chapter 20, you see these sisters, they're not only vying for their husband Jacob's affection, but they're even now competing over who should sleep with him in bed, whose turn it is to be a wife to him, or a mother to his children, at night. And not only is it happening among the sisters, but now you see them also bring in their servant girls with him as well. So you got four women all now into this whole discord that is going on within this family. The other thing you will recognize that they go to great lengths to tell you what the names of each child, and also with telling you the names of each child, they also tell you the meaning of the names. And when you look at the meaning of the names, you can again see that there is rivalry between Leah and Rachel in their contest to have the most children, as well as you can see that there is struggles that is going on. There's victories going on between the sisters. So as we know, when we finished last week, chapter 29, Leah had already had 4 children. What had taken place is that we knew that although Jacob had 2 wives, Leah the elder and Rachel the younger, he loved Rachel more, and it was already pointed out that how much he loved her over Rachel. And so when Leah starts to have before she starts to have a child, you can tell that for God, God had mercy, he had compassion on Leah, and she was able to start bearing children. However, Rachel was barren, and you get this sense that God had that obviously it appears that God would have loved Jacob to be in love with both wives. He had 2, and why not? And by him being more in love with one over the other, God shows mercy toward the one who was not as loved by the husband. And so you see last week, God gives Leah 4 children, Reuben and Simeon and Levi and Judah. Those were the first 4 children of Joseph, and the first 4 children of Leah. Now, when we get to chapter 30, you will see now that Rachel is jealous. She's not bearing Jacob any children. She's jealous of her sister. And she says to Jacob, give me children or I'll die. So it's almost like she's blaming Jacob for it. But obviously you can't blame Jacob. He's having children with Leah. So obviously Rachel, the problem is you. That's the human thing to think. And so while she is angry with Jacob, Jacob is also angry with her in verse 2. And he says to her, am I in the place of God who has kept you from having children? So Jacob is now blaming God for her not having any children. And I mean, to be honest with you, he's correct, because the reason why Rachel wasn't having, not necessarily that she's barren, but it's because of the fact that Jacob loves her more than he loves Leah, or at least he loves her. He doesn't appear to love Leah. And so God is having um, pity or mercy on on Leah as a result. So it was obvious to Jacob and everyone else that Leah was giving him children. So the problem had to be with Rachel's infertility, which was really God's doing. Um, and as you continue, you see then that the rivalry starts taking a different turn. In verse 3 of chapter 30, then she said, "Here is Bilhah, my servant. Sleep with her so that she can bear children for me, and I too can build a family through her." And in those days, the servant had a child. In fact, one of the members this morning at the study said, "Oh, so now I see where surrogacy started." And interestingly enough, it is true. It is true. Um, um, so you see here that Rachel, being the one who had no children, she gave her servant girl to her husband. So, and because in those days that child will become more or less her own. And although it was still, although biologically it is Bilhah's child. So Bilhah slept with Jacob. She became pregnant. She bore a son. And then Rachel said, God is, and note, it isn't Bilhah that names the child. Rachel names the child. It tells you in verse 6, then Rachel said, God has vindicated me. He has listened to my plea and given me a son. And she claimed the son as her own. And she said that because of this, she named him Dan. And so this is Jacob's now fifth child, but now the first from Bilhah. And then Rachel's servant had another child. She conceived and bore a second son. And Rachel said, I have had a great struggle with my sister, and I have won. So she named him Naphtali. So now Jacob has six children. Now four from Leah and two from this servant girl. Note that by this time Rachel had stopped bearing children. She isn't finished, but she has stopped bearing children. Yes.
Leah. You meant Leah.
Not Rachel. Sorry. Thank you. Not Rachel. Leah. Leah doesn't have any children yet, but Leah, thank you, Pam. Leah had stopped having, Leah had stopped having children, but at the same time, she is not finished. When we get to verse 9, you see, it says here, when Leah saw that she had stopped having children, she took her servant now. So if Rachel could put her servant, I could put my servant too. And so Leah's servant Zilpah, she gave her to Jacob, and she bore a son. And Leah said, what good fortune. So she named him Gad. And here again, you see Leah is the one who names the child and not the servant girl. Leah's servant Zilpah bore Jacob a second son. And then Leah said, how happy I am. The woman will call me happy. So she named him Asher. And all of these that you hear them are saying, the words that are coming from them, these are the names of these children. And that's why they're calling them these names. And then in verse 14, during wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the fields and found some mandrake plants. Now, mandrake plants, I guess you know, if you didn't know, you get the idea what they are. They're a romance or fertility plant and you will see it used for animals, a different type used for animals later down when it comes to Jacob trying to get his own livestock for himself. But here you see they're using mandrake plants that Reuben found some in the field. he brought them home, realizing now Leah, his mother, she stopped bearing children. She wants to bear some more. And so they brought in these mandrakes to see if it will do the trick. Um, um, and so you will see in verse 14, during wheat harvest, Reuben went out into the fields, found some mandrake plants, which he brought to his mother Leah. And Rachel said to Leah, please give me some of your son's mandrakes, because she too, at this point in time, does not have any children. And maybe the mandrakes will also do the trick for her as well. So, but she said to her, and this is Leah, but she said to her, wasn't it enough that you took away my husband? Will you take my son's mandrakes too? Very well, Rachel said, he can sleep with you tonight in return for your son's mandrakes. So here you see in that verse, you almost see a similarity between Esau wanting some stew, and it is almost like, what is my birthright if I can't eat some of this stew? So yeah, you can have the birthright and I will get the stew. And here you see now, again, Rachel is saying to her sister, okay, yes, you can go in with your husband and for me getting the mandrakes. And what happens? You will see that Jacob came from the fields that evening. Leah went out to meet him, and she says to him, you must sleep with me. I have hired you with my son's mandrakes. So he slept with her that night. And what happens? Leah bears a fifth child. She gets pregnant. She bears a fifth child. And then Leah said, God has rewarded me for giving my servant to my husband. So she named this child Issachar. In verse 19, Leah conceives again, and she bore Jacob a sixth son. Then Leah said, God has presented me with a precious gift. This time my husband will treat me with honor because I have borne him six sons. So she named him Zebulun. So now you see, now at this point in time, Jacob has 10 children, 10 sons. And then it tells you sometime later, she gave birth to a daughter and named her Dinah. It doesn't tell you what her name means, why she named her Dinah, nothing. It is just, and that's the only daughter that Jacob has. And he has that daughter from Leah. So when you look at it, Leah bore him 7 children. And you could almost, if you remember, I always say in the Bible, numbers have a whole lot of symbolism and meaning. 7 now will denote for Leah, again, as the number 7 denotes completion. So she has 7 children, and you will realize she has no more children after that. And then in verse 22, you see here, then God remembered Rachel. Not that he needed to remember her. I'm sure he didn't forget her, but it says God remembered her and listened to her and enabled her to conceive. And she became pregnant and gave birth to a son and said, God has taken away my disgrace. She named him Joseph and said, may the Lord add to me another son. And that's what the name Joseph means. May the Lord add to me another. And so Joseph is now the 11th child and the first child of Rachel. And you realize that the children have stopped there. We don't hear about the birth of Benjamin, which is the last of the 12 children. You don't hear of the 12 sons. You don't hear about Benjamin yet. He is not born. What happens now is that thankfully, Jacob has had a child from Rachel, and he thinks now it's time to leave and to go back home. Because remember, God promised him, well, his mother told him he will come back home eventually. God also promised him at Bethel that he will come back as well. And now we see here that in verse 25, after Rachel gave birth to Joseph, Jacob said to Laban, send me on my way so that I can go back to my own homeland. Give me my wives and children for whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I have done for you. Now, when you look at this first part of the passage, this first 24 verses, the underlying factor or the longer underlying message that you see coming out here is that when you take matters into your own hands instead of let God be God, you get all this kind of drama. And this is what you see going on here with this whole family. A whole lot of drama because people just took matters into their own hands and would not allow God to be God. Coupled with the fact you have to remember that at this time, Jacob was, although he was going to be one of the patriarchs, Jacob was not that spiritual or religious a man. Yes, he had an encounter with God at Bethel, which appears to be his first encounter. And so he realizes that, there is a God. And what his fathers talked about, and probably talked about his grandfather and so forth, that there is the presence of God. But he was not a religious or a man who was into God, but you will see going forward that he is now going to become more a religious man. He's going to realize that God does exist, and he is going to depend on God more than he used to depend on God. Because when he went to Laban and all of that, you see, and you compare him to the unnamed servant who Abraham sent to get a wife from Isaac, you could send that you sense that the unnamed servant was a more religious and faithful man to God than Jacob was. And so, but that is going to turn around for Jacob. And so what you see here now, Jacob is pleading to Laban to let me go with my wives and my children and so forth. And you get this impression here that obviously um, Jacob was, although he is Laban's nephew, he has always been treated like a servant. And here you are going to see that Laban is going to you can hear the words of work and service and wages and pay are going to dominate the next few verses. So you see Jacob is saying, give me my wife, in verse 26, give me my wives and children for whom I have served you, and I will be on my way. You know how much work I have done for you. But Laban said to him, if I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. He added, name your wages and I will pay you. Jacob said to him, you know how I have worked for you and how your livestock has fared under my care. The little you had before I came, the little that you had before I came has increased greatly, and the Lord has blessed you wherever I have been. But now, when may I do something for my own household? And again, Laban asked him, what shall I give you? And so you see this whole notion of Jacob working for his uncle more so than being really a nephew to the uncle. And one of the things we have to recognize is that where Laban lived, he existed in an area where people were under the Hittite law. Now, this Hittite law was different to the law of Hammurabi, which would have been a law that Jacob and Isaac and them would have existed under. The Hittite law dictated that if Laban was considering his daughters and their children as if he saw as their children, as his children, or as his property, not even his children, his property, because Jacob was a servant, then it meant that Jacob's wives and children belonged to Laban, the same way that Jacob would have belonged to him as his servant. And so with the Hittite law, when a freeborn wife of a slave and her children became the property of the slave master. So it is quite likely that Jacob and his wife and children, although he wanted to leave with them, he couldn't. And maybe that is why he was asking permission, because really and truly they were all Laban's property under that law. I mean, even when it came to the law of the Sinai covenant, in that time, if you were single, if you came and you were single, you left single. If you came married with a wife, then your wife would leave with you, but you could even still leave with your wife if you had married her after you came. So it was one of those kinds of laws that is probably why Jacob had to ask for permission to take his family, because technically, although they were his biologically, they were not his legally. They were still Laban's own legally. And if you realize, Laban asking, name your wages. How much do you want me to pay you? He says that twice. And Jacob realized, I'm not getting out of here that easily. So instead of continuing to pursue that course of action, he decided then, you will see in verse 31, when Laban asks, what should I give you? Jacob then replies, don't give me anything. But if you will do this one thing for me, I will go on tending your flocks and watching over them. So he changes his whole tune of trying to leave with his family and decided, I'm going to stay on, because he realizes that Laban is not letting him go that easily. And you will find here how things change, because remember, and you are going to see it coming up here. In verse 32, let me go through all your flocks today and remove from them every speckled or spotted sheep, every dark-colored lamb, every spotted or speckled goat. They will be my wages, and my honesty will testify for me in future. Whenever you check on the wages you have paid me, any goat in my possession that is not speckled or spotted, or any lamb that is not dark-colored, will be considered stolen. So here you see Jacob seeking to suggest that, okay, I will take what would have been in those days not the really good product, the best breed, those that were speckled and spotted and striped. He would not have those. He will have those, while Laban will have the others. One of the things that you have to remember as well, that Laban had recognized that it was because of Jacob that he was able to be blessed. And you saw that in verse 27, when Laban said, if I have found favor in your eyes, please stay. So he wants him to stay. I have learned by divination that the Lord has blessed me because of you. And here you see this word divination. We may call it magic. It really was a situation where the pagan gods were consulted. So Laban would have consulted the pagan gods, which is whom he would have worshipped. And you will see that Rachel will take them eventually, or at least take some gods' idols eventually. But Laban would have consulted some pagan gods who would have imparted some kind of knowledge. He might have gone to some pagan priest who would have told him in trying to ascertain what this is all about, would have told him, well, hey, Laban, it's because of Jacob, God blessing him is the reason why you have been blessed. So Laban realizes that, and now he wants to hold on to Jacob. So he wants him to stay, he wants him to name his wage and all this good stuff. And you will find then that Jacob does eventually name his wage. But what happens? Laban the trickster, Laban the deceiver, he goes again. And you'll see in verse 34, he says, all right, yeah, I agree. Let it be as you have said. Then that same day, he removes all the male goats that had streak, spots, speckles, or spotted female goats, all that had white on them, all the dark colored lambs, and he placed them in the care of his sons. Then he put a 3-day journey between himself and Jacob, while Jacob continued to tend the rest of Laban's flock. So here is Laban again. He deceives Jacob. And all those animals that Jacob requested that would have become his, he gives them to his own sons. And now you realize that they talk about Laban having sons, and I'll tell you why I say that later on, because you don't hear about Laban having any sons in the beginning, but apparently he seems to have had now sons. And what you see here is this whole notion of he put a 3-day journey between them. Again, number 3 is symbolic. And I believe what it means here is that God is going to intervene, because 3 is a number of completion as well, or a number of perfection. And so it tells you now that God is going to intervene, and we're going to see God intervene in this. Then in verse 37, what do you see happen again now? I guess you have the animals version of a romantic or a fertility plant, where you had the mandrakes for the human beings. You're going to now have fresh cut branches of poplar, almond, and plane trees. And these are going to be used in now for the animals in terms of producing new flock. So Jacob, however, took fresh cut branches from poplar, almond, and plane trees and made white strips on them. By peeling the bark and exposing the white inner wood of the branches, then he placed the peeled branches into all the watering troughs, so that they will be directly in front of the flocks when they came to drink. And when the flocks were in heat and came to drink, they mated in front of the branches, and they bore young that were streaked or speckled or spotted. And Jacob set apart the young of the flock by themselves, but made the rest face the streaked and dark-colored animals that belonged to Laban. Thus he made separate flocks for himself, and did not put them with Laban's animals. Whenever the stronger females were in heat, Jacob will place the branches in the troughs in front of the animals, so they will mate near the branches. But if the animals were weak, he will not place them there. So the weak animals went to Laban, the strong ones went to Jacob, and in this way the man grew exceedingly prosperous and came to own large flocks, female and male servants, camels, and donkeys. So you see here now that Jacob, realizing what Laban did, he now puts something else into action. Again, he kind of deceived. What did you say, Pam?
He's tricky.
He's tricking. There's all trick. This is a whole thing of tricksting, bear tricks going on. And he tricked him now. And what he's also doing is that although his animals are the spotted ones and the speckled ones and the striped ones, they're the stronger ones. So he's getting the stronger ones while Laban is getting the weaker ones. And you will start to realize, because of Laban's inability to let Jacob go, and to let him return home, because he has to return home. God promised him he's going to return home even before he got there. And since Laban is trying to keep him there, now the prosperity that Jacob was able to bring upon Laban in those first 14 years, you are going now to see in what is the next 6 years, Laban is not going to be prosperous anymore. And you will also find, I think, in the next chapter, chapter 31, that Laban is going to try to change the wages belonging to Jacob on multiple occasions because Jacob mentions it. And you will see that even although he tried to do that, and to try to deceive Jacob, that the Lord is now with Jacob and less with Laban, because of Laban's refusal to let Jacob go with his family. So you see this whole deception going on again in the entire family. Now, as you heard me said earlier just now, that it appears that now Laban has sons. And the reason I say that he probably did not have any before is because if you remember when Jacob showed up in Haran and he came to the well, who did he see?
Rachel,
And what was she doing?
drawing
She was
water.
a shepherdess.
For she was a shepherdess. And in those days, if you did not have male sons, or you could not get male, for lack of a word, shepherds or herders or whatever to care for your flock, you had to resort to the girls of your family. And you will see Laban doing that. Yes, Marilyn.
And note it's the second daughter.
And it is the second daughter, true. And honestly, and that is true. And she would have been the inferior daughter. She would have been the inferior daughter, unfortunately. And we realize that because you see, Laban would not allow Jacob to marry her without marrying Leah first. That was a no-no within their own family and within their own tradition. So yes, the second daughter, the younger daughter, was the one who was doing this, and not even the older daughter. So that is why I said it is quite possible Laban did not have those daughters probably came, those sons, sorry, probably came within that next 14, 20 years where Jacob was working all that time. He had sons that can now do this kind of work. I was wondering if there was something else I wanted to share. I talked about the number 3, that God was being involved here. Any questions from any of you? Any questions?
No, well, I had a question. Did Laban get angry with Jacob because
If Laban got angry with Jacob,
he knew he was
you will see that happen in chapter 31. Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yes. You will see that happen in chapter 31. But yes, he was angry. With, and that also is a very interesting story.
But did either of them feel like God was punishing them, or
Wait, say that again, please.
No,
I said,
no,
did either of them feel like God was punishing them for deceiving the other one, or?
Me at this point in time, no. In fact, we are soon getting in chapter 31. We're going to see the end of Laban.
Oh, okay.
There's not going to be much more of Laban after he encounters Jacob again in chapter 31. When he leaves, he's going to be out of the picture. In terms of whether they felt they were being punished for their deception, not yet up to this point. I'm trying to think if Laban thinks he was, but I don't recall. I don't recall. But you're going to see it develop. I mean, as I said, Jacob is meant to go back home. His mother looked forward to the day he was going to go back. God told him he was going to go back. And you will see in chapter 31, when you read it, that God then tells him to go back. And he obeys God's command. And he does believe that God is going to help him again, although he still, it is like most like, yeah, I believe God is going to do this for me, but let me just put a little few things in place just in case. And you will see Jacob doing that. But it is human nature. It is human nature. And so you will see God doing that. I'm sorry, you will see Jacob doing that in chapter 31 when we continue. I mean, so, and chapter 31, I think, is what, 55 verses, but it's an interesting chapter. It's a really nice chapter. And also what it leads into, not only does he encounter Laban again, but then it leads into his preparation to meet Esau. And that is, and you know how they left. It's going to be interesting how they meet after not seeing each other for about 20 years. Yes, Bryce, and then Susan.
Okay.
You mean Leah? It's not Leah.
Leah, however you pronounce it. All right. Yeah.
It's Leah.
Okay.
It's
All
Leah,
right.
not Leah.
Okay.
Leah
Bryce.
is the New Testament. I'm looking at myself and said, like, wait a minute, this is the Old Testament. Her name is Leah, not Leah.
All right, Bryce.
Are
Go
we
ahead,
talking,
Susan.
are we talking Star Wars or what? Princess Leia?
In terms of what?
The name Leia in
Princess
Star Wars.
It all depends. I believe. Listen, listen. I am not sure how the Hebrews
No,
pronounce
I
it.
was just,
I
I
know
was
in
kidding.
I know in the English or British system we say Leah. Maybe in the
Oh, I had
American they
another
say Leah.
question
So
too.
yes,
Who was the oldest son? I forgot. I mean, I've lost track.
Reuben.
Okay, so he's the one that gets all the goodies because he's the oldest, right?
Well,
I mean, he's
you will learn more about him when you get into the story of Jacob in its fullness,
okay.
with the brothers as they get older. He is the one that will save Joseph's life. He will save Joseph's life. I think he is the one. I think. Don't quote me, but I think he's the one that saves Joseph's life, because when the brothers wanted to kill Joseph, he was the one that said, no, don't do that. Let us put him down in this hole. And
Okay.
I think
So
he is.
Reuben
I
was
think
the
he's.
okay.
But Reuben is the elder son. But you also have to recognize, and you will see it here, that in the tradition in the Bible is that the firstborn is usually mentioned first, or the child of importance. The favorite, if you want to put it that way, is the one that is
That's
mentioned
what
first. And you're going to see in chapter 31 that Leah's name is going to be mentioned before. Sorry, that Rachel's name is going to be mentioned before Leah. And so you're going to see that even although Rachel is the younger, her name is going to take over from her older sister. And at the same time, you have to remember the promised seed passes through Joseph. And since he is the elder son of Rachel, he is the one that bears prominence going forward when he becomes.
I thought it was Judah. No,
That is what, the oldest
I thought
child?
it was Judah. No, the promised seed went through Judah.
But Rachel's son was Joseph.
Hold on.
Rachel's son was Joseph, so he's the eldest.
Wait. Hold on a second. Hold on.
Okay.
No. You're saying Judah was the fourth child of Leah.
Right.
Yes, because he
Right.
is the one. He's the one that is named after. Judea is named after him. Yes, correct.
Right.
But
Right.
but Joseph is. But you will find that even Judah is the one the promised seed goes through. But Joseph is going to take more prominence even than him because he becomes the governor of Egypt. And you
Oh,
hear
yeah, yeah,
more.
yeah.
You hear more
Yeah.
of Joseph, and his prominence, and his saving. Actually, he's the one that's going to be more or less like their savior because been away from the famine. But yes, Judah will be the one, and that is where the name Judah comes from, where Judea
Judea.
sometimes correct Judea.
Mhm.
So yeah. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, so Joseph was the first only son of Rachel, right?
Hmm?
No,
No, there's Benjamin as well, but Benjamin hasn't been born yet. There's no mention of
Okay.
Benjamin up to this point.
But Joseph
Rachel
is
has
firstborn to Rachel. Reuben is
correct
firstborn to
is
Leah.
Reuben.
Okay.
No,
Okay,
it's
thanks.
Reuben. Yeah, Leah's firstborn is Reuben. Rachel's firstborn is Joseph, and she
Okay.
would have two children,
Okay,
Joseph and Benjamin.
that's good. Lineage, thank you.
Yes. So you're going to see that, um, but when you look at all the sons, Jacob's favorite was Joseph. Which and you see the thing is you're going to realize when you get into Exodus and the children come in, the sons, his brothers come in and seeing him, Joseph tells them, what you did for bad, but God did it for good, and by that he meant when they sold him to these folks to Egypt and what they did to him, they were doing it for bad. They thought they were rid of him, that's the last they will see of him. And they even went home and told the father that he was dead, and showed him the coat with the blood in it and all this sort of stuff that they decided to get from an animal and make it look like if he had died. But the way you see again, the way how all things were, it comes back to haunt you because there's this famine and Israel has to go to Egypt where they were storing, and lo and behold, Joseph recognized that they are his brothers, and then they eventually will recognize, when he tells them that I'm your brother. Yeah.
But Joseph was the favorite because it was Rachel's child. Is that
Correct.
pretty
Correct.
clear? Okay.
Correct. And you can tell, I mean, you don't absolutely know, if my mind serves me correctly, you don't absolutely know how much he loves Benjamin until when Joseph sends for Benjamin when they went back to where they were residing. Joseph keeps one of the brothers, but he tells them they're not to come back without Benjamin. And the father, Jacob, and now an old man, did not want Benjamin to go because he had lost Joseph, and now he felt he was about to lose Benjamin as well. And so, but the sons told him, if we don't take Benjamin, we can't go back. So they had to go with him, and just put your trust in God that he will make things happen for you, and that is what is important. Any other questions? All right. Well, we got through in an hour today. So make sure that you read chapter 31. I always like you to read one ahead. So read chapters 31 and 32 for next week's class, and we'll pick it up from there. Have a good evening, everyone. Have a good dinner.
Thank you. You too.
All right. And thank you, Ed. Thank you, Ted. I will wait a minute. Hold on a minute. Did you send? Oh, you were going to send it to me in my text to my phone, right, Ed? Right, Ted? Good. Okay. All right, Ted. Thank you so much. And
Okay.
I
Enjoy
will
your
see
evening. Thanks.
you enjoy.
Father,
Yeah.
did Harry get you? Harry,
Capel. When was this? Today? I spoke with him earlier today at the office.
Okay.
no,
This is
around
this evening?
5:60. I'll give you a buzz.
Okay, no, I have not heard from him.
Okay.
Thanks. God bless everyone. Have a good night.
Thank
Good
you.
night.
Bye. Thank you,
Good night.
Pam, for hosting.
Thanks.